In 1939, a shadow fell over Europe. Nazi Germany, a nation priding itself on unparalleled engineering prowess, stood as a behemoth of military might. Their engineers, masters of precision, looked across the Atlantic with disdain. They saw the United States not as a rival, but as a land of comfortable, lazy people. A nation that built cars for housewives, not weapons of war. They laughed, they mocked. What can a country with no real military tradition do? They sneered in the bustling factories of Berlin and Munich. They believed their meticulous craftsmanship, their pursuit of perfection in every tank and every plane, was invincible. Little did they know, this arrogance would come at a staggering price. In a few short years, that laughter would die in their throats, replaced by a stunned, deafening silence. They were about to witness the awakening of a sleeping giant and the birth of the most formidable industrial machine the world had ever seen. When the brutal reality of war finally reached America's shores after the attack on Pearl Harbor, President Franklin D. Roosevelt didn't just call for a response. He issued an audacious, almost ludicrous challenge to the nation. He stood before Congress and declared a production target that seemed to border on fantasy: 50,000 airplanes in a single year. To put that into perspective, the entire U.S. aircraft industry had produced fewer than 3,000 planes in the preceding year. The number was so astronomical that even many American industrialists privately shook their heads in disbelief. It was impossible, they thought. But Roosevelt wasn't just making a speech. He was lighting a fire under the nation's industrial heartland. This wasn't a request, it was a call to arms, not for soldiers on the battlefield, but for workers on the assembly line. The gauntlet had been thrown down, and an entire nation was about to rise to the occasion, proving that the impossible was merely a starting point. The world watched, skeptical. The Germans, in particular, were confident. How could a nation obsessed with consumer comforts possibly retool for the grim business of total war? Their philosophy was rooted in precision and quality. Each German tank, like the formidable Tiger, was a masterpiece of engineering, assembled by skilled craftsmen over weeks. It was a testament to perfection. But war, they would soon learn, isn't just about the quality of the individual weapon. It's about numbers. It's about attrition. It's about replacing what is lost faster than the enemy can destroy it. And this is where the American approach, long underestimated, was about to rewrite the rules of modern warfare. The Germans saw American industry as a system for building refrigerators and family sedans. They failed to see the raw, untamed power lurking within that very system, the power of mass production. Detroit was about to answer Roosevelt's call. The Motor City was transforming into the arsenal of democracy. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. It was as if the entire country became one giant singular factory, humming with a unified purpose. The spirit of competition that once drove companies to outsell each other was replaced by a spirit of collaboration to outproduce the enemy. Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, giants of the automotive world, stopped making cars overnight. Their assembly lines, once churning out shiny new coupes and sedans, were ripped apart and reconfigured with breathtaking speed. Blueprints for family cars were swapped for schematics of tanks and aircraft engines. But it wasn't just the auto industry. A company that made corsets began manufacturing grenade belts. A toy train manufacturer started producing compasses for bombers. A pinball machine factory retooled to make armor-piercing shells. From coast to coast, the hum of civilian life was drowned out by the roar of wartime production. Millions of Americans, engineers, factory workers, secretaries and foremen, many of them women entering the industrial workforce for the first time as Rosie the Riveters, marched to the relentless rhythm of the assembly line. This wasn't just industry, it was a national crusade. And at the heart of this crusade was a place that would become a legend, the Willow Run factory in Michigan. Built by Henry Ford, it was an industrial marvel, the largest factory building in the world at the time. Its purpose was singular and ambitious, to mass-produce the B-24 Liberator, a long-range heavy bomber, on a scale previously unimaginable. The German method for building a similar bomber was a painstaking process, taking days, sometimes a week, for a single plane. At Willow Run, Ford applied the same assembly line principles he had perfected for the Model T. The massive airframe of the B-24 was broken down into smaller, manageable components. These parts flowed down a mile-long assembly line, with workers and riveters adding pieces at each station. The scale was staggering. At its peak, the factory was a city unto itself, with over 42,000 workers operating in shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The result? A new B-24 Liberator bomber rolled off the assembly line, ready for flight. Not every week, not every day, but every 63 minutes. A single factory was producing an entire squadron's worth of heavy bombers in less than a day. This incredible feat was being replicated across the country. While Germany built its perfect machines one by one, America built overwhelming quantities. While a German factory might produce one state-of-the-art Tiger tank in a day, American factories were churning out dozens of Sherman tanks. The Sherman might not have been a match for the Tiger one-on-one, but the battlefield was rarely a one-on-one duel. For every Tiger tank the Allies faced, there were 5, 10, or even 15 Shermans ready to swarm it. This was the fundamental difference in philosophy. Germany built for the perfect engagement. America built for the statistical certainty of victory. American pilots flew into battle, knowing that if their plane was shot down, another one was already on its way from a factory in California or Michigan. This relentless tide of material, this endless stream of ships, tanks, and planes, was something the Axis powers simply could not comprehend, let alone match. By 1944, the sheer output of the American war machine was staggering. The United States had produced over 300,000 aircraft, 86,000 tanks, and 2 million Army trucks. The U.S. Navy, which had been devastated at Pearl Harbor, had been rebuilt into the largest naval force in history, with its shipyards launching new vessels at a pace that defied belief. Liberty ships, the workhorses of the Allied supply chain, were being assembled in a matter of days. This industrial tsunami not only equipped America's own vast forces, but also supplied its allies, from Britain to the Soviet Union, through the Lend-Lease program. The laughter that had once echoed in German factories had long since vanished. It was replaced by a grim realization. They were not fighting an army. They were fighting an entire industrial civilization. They could destroy a plane, but they couldn't destroy the factory that built 10 more to replace it. They could sink a ship, but they couldn't stop the shipyard that launched a new one every week. The war was ultimately won not just by brave soldiers on the front lines, but by the millions of anonymous workers on the home front. It was won by the ingenuity of engineers who could turn a refrigerator factory into a bomber plant. It was won by the grit of the women who learned to rivet and weld, proving they were just as crucial to the war effort as any soldier. The story of America's industrial might during World War II serves as a powerful testament to what a unified nation can achieve. After the war, a captured German engineer, one of the very men who had likely scoffed at American capabilities just a few years earlier, summed it up with chilling clarity. When asked how Germany, with all its engineering genius and military prowess, had lost, his answer was simple and profound. "They won," he said, "because they could build faster than we could destroy." That, in the end, was the ultimate weapon, the unstoppable power of American mass production. Have you ever wondered what truly wins a war? Is it brilliant generals, heroic soldiers, cutting-edge technology? The answer might surprise you, and it lies in the heart of a city that once pulsed with the rhythm of industry: Detroit. Imagine this. The year is 1945. The dust of World War II is just beginning to settle. A group of German prisoners, including some of their most brilliant engineers, are taken on a tour, not of a battlefield, not of a military base, but of Detroit, Michigan. They expected to see what they were familiar with: small, meticulous workshops where master craftsmen built engines with painstaking precision. They believed war was won through perfection, through the flawless execution of a single superior design. But what they saw in Detroit wasn't a workshop. It was a mechanical beast, an entire city in motion. Their eyes widened as they witnessed something beyond their comprehension. Conveyor belts, stretching for miles, snaked through colossal factories that never slept, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Under the relentless glare of factory lights, they saw a sight that was almost alien to them: women and men working side by side, shoulder to shoulder, assembling complex V8 engines with a speed and ease that made it look like they were putting together children's toys. The sheer scale was staggering. The air hummed not just with machinery, but with a unified, unstoppable purpose. One German engineer, his face a mixture of awe and dawning horror, turned to his compatriot and murmured a sentence that captured the essence of their defeat. "Now I understand why we lost." In that moment, the myth of their own superiority shattered. They had prided themselves on precision, on creating the perfect tank, the perfect rifle. But the Americans, they had a different philosophy. To the Americans, war wasn't just made of precision, it was made of production, overwhelming, relentless, awe-inspiring production. Let's put that into perspective. While German factories struggled under bombing raids and resource shortages, American industry went into overdrive. By the time the war ended, the United States had produced an arsenal that boggled the mind. We're talking about 300,000 airplanes. Think about that. Enough planes to blacken the skies over any battlefield. They built 88,000 tanks, iron behemoths that rolled across Europe and the Pacific, and an incredible 6 million trucks, the logistical backbone that carried armies, supplies, and hope to the front lines. Every theater of war, on every continent, from the frozen steppes of Russia to the scorching sands of North Africa, from the jungles of Southeast Asia to the beaches of Normandy, used something built in Detroit. The city wasn't just a part of the war effort, it was the engine room. It was the heart that pumped steel, rubber, and firepower to the Allied forces. President Franklin D. Roosevelt didn't call it that for nothing. He named it the Arsenal of Democracy. It was a title earned not with speeches, but with sweat, grease, and the unending clang of metal on metal. This was the quiet triumph of the common worker. It was the victory of the mechanic who never held a rifle but built the Sherman tank that liberated a town. It was the victory of the young woman, Rosie the Riveter, who left her home to build the B-24 Liberator bombers that flew from American factories to European skies. These were the unsung heroes of the war. They didn't storm beaches, but their work ensured that those who did had the tools they needed to win. Their battlefield was the factory floor, and their weapon was the assembly line. Detroit became more than just a city. It was an idea. It was the living, breathing proof that a free society could mobilize its people and its resources on a scale the world had never seen. The German engineers had come from a system that valued rigid hierarchy and specialized genius. They saw the American system, this chaotic, democratic melting pot of a workforce, and they laughed. They saw it as inefficient, undisciplined. They laughed, that is, until they saw Detroit, until they stood before the sheer, undeniable power of the machine that won the war. It wasn't just a machine of gears and pistons. It was a human machine, a coalition of millions of ordinary people who came together to build for an ideal. In those sprawling factories, the German engineers learned a profound lesson, one that wasn't written in any of their advanced engineering manuals. They learned that true power isn't just found in the perfection of a single object. It lies in the collective ability to build together, to produce at a scale that can overwhelm any adversary, and to do it all in the name of a shared belief. They had focused on building the perfect weapon. America had focused on building a better world, and it started by building the tools to defend it, one bolt, one rivet, one engine at a time. The roar of Detroit's factories was the sound of freedom being forged in steel. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the incredible stories that shaped our world. We'll see you in the next video.